What up? It's your girl July from Kickback Couture, and today is the first day of our 30-day Reason Marathon. I'm going to be showing you 3 techniques you can use to make your drums hit harder and blend well together in the mix. Now, the first way is transient shaping. But before I get into transient shaping, I'm going to play you a little bit of this drum loop so that you can understand what's going on so far, what kind of drums I have. Now, you can use these techniques for any drums that you are putting together, whether it be hip-hop, whether it be trap, house, whatever the case. If you want them to smack a little bit harder and, sound good together, this is what you can do. All right, you get the point. Now, the first way we're going to discuss is transient shaping. So normally what I would do is go through my individual drums and, if I wanted them to smack a little bit more, I would shape the transient. Now, the transient is the attack of the drum. So, for example, with this snare, which you can get from the Just Blaze drum kit that's free on my website, the transient is going to be this initial attack right here. And you can see all this here. This is the tail. This is the body. So the transient is where that first smack begins. And you can see it gets loud. It's loudest right here. So we want to enhance that transient so that it'll hit harder. And I'm going to put this on the entire drum bus so that it'll make everything sound uniform. So, of course, you can put it on individual drums, but in this case, we're going to put it on everything. So I selected all of my drums in this track. I only have one sample playing in the background for the purpose of this demonstration. This is a Reason preset, so you can go find it if you want to flip it. Feel free to send it to me. I'll listen to it. All right. So I'm going to select all of my drums, holding down Shift. So I'm going to click on this one, hold down Shift, click on the last one, and I'm going to press Command G on a Mac or Control G on a Windows or something like that. Another way to do it if you don't like commands is to just right click and go to Group. So that would be, I'm going to go to Route 2, New Output Bus, or as it says there, Command G. So I like pressing Command G. And then I'm going to name this Drum Bus. Okay. Now what you can do in this bus is add processing, add effects. So I'm going to add a transient shaper. Now I'm going to use a transient shaper that is available in Reason. And the only transient shaper available in Reason is an instrument, which is the Kong device. So we're going to be using Kong as an effect. All right, so we're going to create a Kong drum device. And as we create it, we're going to hold down Shift so that it doesn't automatically connect itself to anything. Then we're going to hit this drop down arrow here. And we are going to take our To device and send that to the audio input here. And we're going to take our output and send that to the From device. And we should be seeing some signal here when we hit play. So now our drums are passing straight through this Kong. Okay, I'm going to add my transient shaper here under the bus effects and listen to it and hear what it does. I'm going to turn this amount up. So automatically, immediately, you can hear that it is affecting the entire drum bus. You can hear it's affecting the attack, how long the drums last. So what we want to do here is I'm going to keep the amount up at 127 for now. But I want to bring this attack up so that our drums smack a little bit harder on those transients that I explained earlier. I might even pull the decay down a bit like I just did and leave it like that. If you want, you can bring down this amount a bit if you don't want it to affect as much and kind of dial it into your taste. All right, so that's a nice vibe. And if you want to hear the before and after, bypass it. So you can definitely hear those drums sound cleaner on the transients, and the attacks hit a bit harder and they blend well together because the effect is over the entire drum bus and not just one drum. So they sound good together. All right, let's move on to the second technique. Now, this next technique is something called parallel processing. This is when you duplicate your signal and you process the duplicate and then you blend it in volume-wise, level-wise. So I'm going to take this drum bus and I'm actually going to right-click it and we're going to create a parallel channel. Now it says P1 drum bus. So let's solo this parallel channel. And you notice we have an exact copy of what we had originally in this drum bus. So it'll just be playing twice. But I want to bring the volume down here. And we're going to add some processing to our parallel channel. Now what I like to do is add saturation. So let's go ahead and use a device that's native to Reason. We're going to use Scream. And I'm going to go into Effects, Reason Devices, Scream for Distortion. And you could play with the different distortions. I know a lot of you will have your favorites and your go-tos. So let's start with Overdrive. And I'm just going to solo this and turn it up a bit so we can hear what it sounds like. Let's bring the damage control all the way up. Now all of this sounds terrible, right? Turn that up a bit. Okay, I like how feedback sounds. Let's play with these different parameters. I'm going to cut some low end. All right, let's blend this in with our original drum track. And like I said, you are literally just going to play with this and see what it comes up with. You're going to come up with some amazing textures. And you might find one you like. You find one you like, save it, use it for later. All right, let's hear this. Whoops, let's blend it in. All right, so let's hear those drums without our parallel processing. And with it. So this is our drum bus by itself. And this is our drum bus with the processing. And together. We can even turn our transient shaper back on. All right, so we got our parallel distortion going on. I turned the transient shaper back on, and these drums are already enhanced and optimized. So let's take it a step further. Now, we've done our parallel processing, and we've done our transient shaping. So now I want to show you frequency split processing. In this case, we're going to process our low end separate from our high end. Okay, now this could be the thing that pushes your drums to the next level and makes people wonder, like, how the heck did you get your drums to sound like that? So let me show you what to do. All right, so let's start here. You can press K to kind of lighten the opacity on these wires, like that. Let's start here. You're going to drag in 2 stereo imagers, and you're going to drag in a spider audio merger splitter. For this top stereo imager, we're going to keep it on the low band. For the bottom, we're going to switch this to high band. From there, we're going to add 2 more devices. So let's go ahead and add a compressor. You can add whatever compressor you want to, but if you need to follow along, I suggest maybe just sticking with what I do for this time around. Let's add our master bus compressor here. I'm going to again hold shift so that it doesn't connect as I did with the other devices. And let's also add a pulverizer demolition. And you could add a scream device if you don't have pulverizer. I'm going to drag this splitter up to the top. So the first thing we're going to do is split our signal up in 2. So it is going through this transient shaper still. And if you decide not to keep the transient shaper, then you would just take your output from here. All right. But in my case, my output is going to come from the Kong. So I'm going to take it and we're going to be splitting it here. So we're going to send our audio into the first stereo imager, which we're going to name low band. And we're going to take our audio and send it to this one, which is the high band. All right, now to finish off this setup, we need to send the output somewhere. So let's go ahead and send our outputs to the same Spider audio merger and splitter. And then we're going to drag this upwards into our mix channel like so. Now that already sounds bigger. Let me turn this off so you can hear. Special, man, very special. All right, so let's go ahead and start with our low end. So in this case, we set our crossover to 501 hertz, and we soloed our low band here, and we soloed our high band here to whichever is going to be controlling what. Now let's start with the low end, and we're going to compress the low end. So low end compression. This is going to make the low end sound tighter. I'm going to be doing about 3 decibels of compression, and I'll explain compression for the people who don't know what compression is just yet as I do it. This is what the low band sounds like by itself. Now let's do about 3 decibels of compression. You can go heavier if you would like to experiment with that, but I'm going to stick with 3. And I'll explain what I'm doing as I go. So the threshold is like setting the level of where the compressor starts to work. So right now it's at negative 15 decibels. So anything louder than 15 decibels will get squashed or compressed by this compressor. So if you set it lower, it will compress more. If it's higher, it will be less affected and only the loudest sounds will be affected. So if you look at this meter, you can see it's only moving when the snare and the kick are playing. It's not acting on our hi-hats much, but if we pull the threshold down, you can see a lot more movement. But in this case, I don't want it to be that drastic. So I just wanted to affect that main kick in that snare. And that's good for me. Now, it doesn't have to be at 3 the entire time. It's going to bounce and move because our drum pattern is dynamic and is doing different things throughout the duration of the loop. Now, the ratio is going to determine how much the sound gets squashed or compressed after it crosses the threshold, which is, at this case, negative 23.44 decibels. So it's set to 2-to-1 right now, so it's going to be gentle. But with a higher ratio, like 10-to-1, it's going to be a lot more drastic, and it's really going to clamp down on those peaks that go above the threshold. So I'm going to keep it at 2-to-1 for more of a gentle effect. Now, the next control we're going to go over is the attack. Now, with the attack specifically, a fast attack is going to clamp down on these drums right away. It's going to smooth out the transients. Now, we don't want to smooth out our transients in this case. You might want to do that for a specific reason, like maybe some hi-hats or some rides. But right now, I'm putting it on the entire drum bus, and I don't want to smooth out my kick and my snare. I want it to smack. So I want a slower attack so that those transients can come through, and the compression starts after those transients come through. So I'm going to set my attack to 3 milliseconds. And as far as the release goes, the release is going to determine when the compressor lets go after our sound drops below the threshold we set, that volume, that level. So if you want the drums to breathe a little bit in between those main hits, you'll have a quicker release. But if you want the drums to kind of sound tighter, then you're going to go with a slower release. So if I want the drums to sound tight, we'll have a slow release. And if you want them to breathe, you'll have a longer release. So let's go with about 0.3 seconds for the release so that we can get them to sound tight. And now I'm going to turn these off, and let's work on our high end, and then we'll bring them together and make adjustments if needed. Now for the high end, this is where we add that smack, that distortion, the brightness. And for this purpose, I decided to use pulverizer because I know I can add dirt and squash it with, which squash would be like compression. So I kind of get the best of both worlds, and you can experiment with different devices on your low end and your high end and just see what it takes you. Feel free to comment and let the community know what you prefer to use. So let's add some dirt to this. Oh, and the best part about both of these is that you have a dry and wet knob, so you don't have to blend it in entirely. All right, cool. Let's go ahead and add our low band back in. And let's play with the dry wet knobs if we need to. Okay, that sounds pretty dope. All right, so I've set up some gain matching plugins so we can hear the difference of these drums before we added our processing and after. So this is our before and this is our after volume, so that we just know it doesn't just sound better because it's louder. All right, so let's hear before we added our processing. And after. And this is even without our parallel channel. All right, so if you want to make drums that sound like this, I have tons of free kits on my website. Specifically, the Just Blaze drum kit and the 90s Love drum kit can get you a sound similar to this for drum programming. If you want a drum programming tutorial during these 30 days, definitely let me know. I can supply that. Give me all the ideas you have and anything you want to see. For those of you wanting more personalized guidance, I'm available for private lessons, and I can get you wherever you want to be sonically. So you can book with me at your leisure. And I also have my courses on sale as I update them. So definitely dive into those courses if you want to learn at your own pace. If you love low end like me, You'll probably also be interested in this next tutorial, which is about side chaining. This has been day 1 of our 30-day Reason Marathon. I'll see you tomorrow for day 2.